Yeah. Okay. Let me explain this. Let me explain this to you. If you want to become Dutch because you have a Dutch partner, a spouse, you're married to the person, then that's possible. And you don't need to live in the Netherlands for that. It could be anywhere in the world. If you live in the Netherlands, also possible. However, there are a few things that you need to know, because there's a few exceptions on everything. So you can't apply for Dutch naturalization while you're living in the country which nationality you have. So if you're American, you can't apply while you live in America. But if you want to apply and you move the next day to Canada or Mexico or anywhere else in the world, then you can apply. Okay. However, the requirements are as follows. You need 3 years of marriage and 3 years of cohabitation, living together. Okay. If you have lived together for the last 3 years or 3+ years, then that's not a big deal, except you need to evidence it. Now, in some countries, like the US or Australia or the UK and many other countries, they don't have a civil registry where they keep your addresses, where they keep records of your movements, etc. And that's the case because Napoleon never conquered those countries, unlike the Netherlands. So the Netherlands has this old French system, civil registry, where everything is recorded. Not just your birth, death, of marriage, but also your address history, where you're living now, your marital status, your nationality, everything is centrally registered in the Netherlands. Other countries don't have this. So if you're living in such a country, then it might be difficult to find evidence, official evidence, that you have lived together the last 3 years. However, it's possible to get that, and we at Habsburg Legal Services can help you with that. There are other evidence that you can collect to show that you have lived together. Okay. Now, the other requirement is that you need to pass your integration exams, or inburgeringsexamen in Dutch. The thing is that at the moment, this is still at language level A2. The government has announced, and the government has agreed, that they're going to change that to B1. There's still a little bit of progress to change the law, but that could be coming this year, maybe beginning next year. We don't know the timing of it. So the language level A2 integration exams is something that you need to pass before you can apply for naturalization. So you do need to speak a level of Dutch. We have a Dutch teacher that teaches remotely, so online if you need help. But besides that, the rules are that you can also apply, you can do your naturalization tests at an embassy if you comply with the requirements of, being able to apply for naturalization abroad. So now it's called a naturalization test rather than integration exam, but it's the same thing. And that needs to be at level A2, language level A2. And then if you have all those things together, you have lived together for the last 3+ years, you're married for the last 3+ years, you have passed your integration exams or your naturalisatie test, then you can apply for Dutch nationality. Now, because you're married to a Dutch national or registered partnership, you're also allowed to keep your current nationality. Now, keep in mind, you can't do this while resident in the country of your current nationality. So if you're South African and live in the Netherlands, if you're American and live in France, that's all okay. But don't forget that you need to have lived together for the last 3+ years. So if you are looking at moving from one country to another, then please do not move at a different time. And when I say moving, it is the actual move that you need to evidence. Because sometimes if a country does have a registration system like the Netherlands, like in Belgium and Germany and some other countries, then sometimes you arrive in a country and they say, well, you are an EU citizen, we can register you today, but for your spouse you have to wait until we have all the documents and test this and submitted your application, and then we can register you. And then they register the person sometime later. Now you get a different notification on the paperwork that what person A moved in on this date and person B later on that date, which is not correct, because in actuality you went there together. And that is what you're going to have to evidence. You're going to have to keep your boarding passes for the flight tickets. You're going to need to have your rental agreement with both your names on it, and so on and so on. So you're going to need to show that you never separated formally. Okay. Now, traveling separately for a holiday, that's something else. If you go on a business trip or you go on a holiday with your sister or something like that, and that's fine, because you're not moving. But the moment you start moving and one person goes before the other, that is when you break that 3 years of cohabitation, the 3 years of living together. So that is what you want to try to avoid. That is something that a lot of people forget. And then the one person says, oh, I'm going to go ahead and travel to the Netherlands. They sometimes want to move together to the Netherlands. And then they arrive in the Netherlands, you get that registration in the Netherlands, and then one person is registered first and the other one secondly. But then if also you flew on a different date, because one person maybe needs to get to go ahead in order to apply for a resident permit for the spouse, which is not necessary, but some people think that's necessary. Then they create a situation where, in fact, they traveled on different dates, and therefore the person needs to wait for another 3 years before they can apply for naturalization. Okay, so that is something to watch out for and to avoid. And yes, even a couple of days can be used as an excuse to reject your application. So try to avoid that. Anyway, just some explanations, and I know it's a lot. If you need help, then get in touch.